Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Comedy on Power Talk, thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And as we begin 2022, it's going to be interesting to see how the authentic, younger, creative cats are going to be able to create a domestic touring circuit in this sort of unknown time. Sort of whether we come out of the pandemic or not. The one thing I do know is that cats like my next guest have carved out a name for themselves over the last half century, and as a result are afforded the opportunity to be able to come and heal people through vibration and spiritual communal music. And my next guest is somebody who's headed to the Fox Theater here in Tucson. He's still doing it, an iconic figure in music history. Don McLean, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, Jake, thanks for having me on. I like that introduction. It's intelligent and it's realistic. And what I am doing is, I have all sorts of backup plans, in terms of getting my work done. My number one backup plan is to stay away from this damn thing.
Oh, 100%.
The second plan I have is to have replacements for guys I work with should there be an issue. And the third way to do it is that, for 20 years I was solo. So I can sit with a guitar and banjo and create a stage that looks like a living room, and I can do a show.
I have no doubt.
So I mean, it'd be a different kind of show, but it would be and people actually like it. So I have a lot of backups for this. I'm going to be there, and this tour is going to happen, unless some theater decides that they can't have the people in there or whatever. So from my end, I just want you to know I've noticed that, somebody gets sick, everybody goes home. That's not going to happen. Not with me.
It's so great to hear your voice and an honor to connect with you. I wrote a book on the Merry Pranksters, Ken Kesey and those cats, and Mason Williams did a lot of work with the Smothers Brothers, and he said that
Mason Williams, sure.
He said the two most brilliant people he ever was around were Ken Kesey and Pete Seeger. And he said Seeger was just a man of the people. And I know you were quoted as saying that he was like a modern day saint. I just want you to talk. I want you to talk about a seminal moment, not on record, but when you first connected with him personally, that left you in awe of Pete Seeger.
Well, I was in awe of Pete Seeger in the second grade because he came to my school.
Wow.
When I was in the second grade, and I went to a school called Henry Barnard Grammar School, which was in New Rochelle, actually a place called Larchmont Woods. It might have been in New Rochelle. It was walking distance from my house. And it was people out there listening, going to Google Henry Barnard Grammar School, New Rochelle, they will see the most beautiful Tudor mansion. That's the grammar school I went to. Gorgeous building. And New Rochelle actually had a history of integration and fighting a racial inequality. They had a controversy known as and it's interesting, the Lincoln School controversy. It's funny that it was named after Abe Lincoln, the school, and this is a place where it had to be integrated, and New Rochellians lined up on the part of, doing the right thing. And so there were a lot of liberals in there, and Pete Seeger was blacklisted. I mean, he was as dead as a doornail in 1952, which is, I think, around the time I was in the second grade. He was blacklisted as a member of the Weavers, and also in those days, not unlike today, there was a cancel culture. And there was a magazine called Red Channels. And if you woke up in the morning, and let's see, you went to a rally somewhere with somebody, tagged along, and they found out what your name was, if it was the wrong kind of rally, your name would turn up in Red Channels. The next day, you were fired.
My God. Well, I'm not surprised.
This happened to teachers, Lawyers had to leave firms. No one would work with them. And this is what we're in now. And this came as a result of a very primitive kind of fear. Even though the Russians had been our allies in World War II, now we had a man named Joseph McCarthy who couldn't get elected if he took his clothes off. He couldn't get arrested, this guy,
Yeah.
But he was in front of a bunch of ladies, a ladies group, and he had this piece of paper. He said, "I know there are 250 communists in the army in this country. That we had somehow been infiltrated by the communists who were our allies, So he immediately got reelected on this. So it's just like a number of these people in Congress who realize if they tell this is people, we're going to give you this and give you that and give you that, well, you get elected, so we got to give them everything, whatever they want. So he got elected, and that started this thing, and Seeger got caught in this, as did the Weavers. I knew all of them. And his career was over, all right? And except for the occasional school that would allow him to sing. And he turned up at my school in the second grade. So I remember this long-legged character, and not realizing later on that that as I grew older, I became a fan of folk music. My Uncle Malcolm got me a record by a guy named Frank Warner. Frank Warner was a Rotarian, and he was also a folk music collector. So he would go on these collecting tours in the summertime and play his banjo, and he made this one album for Electrum, and my uncle heard him sing and said, Donnie might like this record because he's starting to play guitar. He got me started in folk music with this Frank Warner record. So this is how I began to discover the Weavers and then Pete Seeger, and then I started reading up about what happened to him because I was always curious about everything, and I found out by the time I was in high school now, I was writing him letters because I'd really gotten into many different kinds of music, and one of them, of course, was his music, but all the interesting artists that were on Folkways Records, and I was into wanting to know about the Blacklist and all that. So one day, my father had died when I was 15. When I was about 16, a big box came from the government, and it said United States Congress on it. And it came to the door, and it was a good-sized box. And my mother said, "Donnie, what is this?" I said, "Oh, it's transcripts from the House on Un-American Activities Committee.
Oh my!
I want to read what they say. I want to read what people say." I tried to plow through it. It was terribly boring, but occasionally I'd read these questions they'd ask. Are you a real American, and this and that. And so this dogged Pete Seeger for most of the 1960s. When I met him, even in the 1960s, he could not leave the country. And finally, he was able to do that. But now I knew him. And the way I got to know him was that I saw a little ad in the paper. I was always keeping an eye out for anything that interested me. A little tiny ad saying, Hudson River Sloop, Pete Seeger. So, look at that in the New York Times. So he was raising money for a boat he was going to build. This was 1966. And I said, I'm going to get in the car and find out where this place is, Garrison, New York, and I'm going to find it. So I had a wonderful adventure, and I was living in Larchmont at the time in a little apartment with my mother. I got in my car and drove, and I discovered the beautiful Hudson Highlands, which I never really knew about, And so I get up and I follow my nose out and go across the Bear Mountain Bridge and up Route 9D. And there's this place, the Osborne Castle. And way up on the top of this mountain, several thousand feet up, I see this enormous castle. And just as I come in this gorgeous driveway off to the left, there's this replica of a boat. And these volunteers had built it out of plywood. And, it was maybe 50 feet long, and it had a mast, with funny little, rags or whatever. And it was a stage. So on it is Pete Seeger singing. And they have a generator there. and there were about 100 people there. So I introduced myself to him. I said, I'm the kid that's been writing. Oh, yes. He said, I know. He would write me back those years. So I got to know him. That's the first time I met him. And then I began to move in now. I was getting to get involved in this organization. And I met some other people who were real work people, volunteers for this whole thing. And I started getting to know them and doing more things in the Hudson Valley. And in 1968, now 2 years later, I got hired by the state of New York to be the Hudson River Troubadour. And what that was is I sang in every river town in the summer of 1968 after I graduated from college.
This is the greatest story. I mean, I cannot believe this. This is unreal. Continue.
I know. Yeah. It's all true.
Wait, you had at some point, you had not yet turned down an offer from Columbia for a master's degree?
Yeah, I turned that offer down that same year.
So you were the troubadour around the
in the summer of '68.
Yeah.
Yeah, they offered me. They said you can get in. Around the time I graduated in June of '68, and I said, nah, I'm going to sing with Pete Seeger.
Right.
So I was working my way up. So I got this job, and I ended up because I now knew more people involved with this flute thing. I got involved to sing on a big festival of theirs, and the thing was really going good. And Seeger was singing a place, and now he came over to me, and I had sung, and he put his very long arm through the window and shook my hand, and from that point we were friends. And he made sure that, and then I moved to a place that wasn't too far away from where he lived, and I was there and available to sing on any of these. He put me on the first voyage of the boat, which was actually in 1969. He asked me if I wouldn't mind coming with a few other fellows, and we would sing some shows in New England prior to the launching of the boat. And then when the boat got launched and actually existed now, because all these years from 66 until 69, when it was launched, he's raising money, for this $150,000 75-foot single-masted flute.
Absolutely.
It's a big mother boat, let me tell you. And it's all real, like the old days, put together with tar. And so Harvey Gamage in South Bristol, Maine, built this boat. And Pete was very proud of this, and it was the people's boat. And so I became involved with this for a good 5 or 6 more years. The whole time I was getting very famous all over the world, I was still doing things with him and for him. What changed me and made me move away was the fact that more and more very hateful anti-American type people began to show up on these shows and say things, like let's burn the city down and all this stuff. I didn't like that.
That's really interesting. Because
so I pulled away.
Don, we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who this is, but
I won't.
I just want you to pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Sure.
I grew up in an era that I believed was normal. It wasn't. It was historically quite abnormal. I grew up in an era when popular music was written by and consumed by educated people. Popular music was geared towards people with an education. George Gershwin, Cole Porter, Frank Lesser, Harry Warren, the list goes on and on. Duke Ellington, Fats Waller, all of that music you could hear on the radio every day.
Right.
I thought it was normal. I thought in the mid-'60s, when the baby boom generation reached adolescence, and 76 million adolescents were suddenly in the world with money in their pockets.
That's right.
I thought that was a revolution that destroyed normalcy in how the market gravitated towards getting teenagers money. and teenage music took over the world and marginalized everything else. And I thought, my God, what's happened to this wonderful world that I lived in? Well, the wonderful world I lived in was terribly unusual.
Don, that was my first interview with a cat named Chuck Israels, an incredible upright bass.
Oh, I know Chuck.
I knew it because Chuck was on the porch with
Bass
Seeger.
player, and I knew him back in the early '60s in the Carly Simon days.
Joan Baez.
Yeah,
Joan Baez.
He ran a camp, and Carly Simon was at that camp as a teenager. And she used to come over and see me sing at the.
How lucky you were, man! You were so lucky. No. First of all, I just want to be clear. In the early '50s, his family was communist, and he was playing with Seeger on the porch, and then he was in the studio with Coltrane 8 years later.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
I played that for you because I'm 43 years old, and I went to a summer camp in upstate New York, and every morning.
The Red Diaper Camp.
It's called Scatico, and every morning the counselor was hung over and he'd throw in a cassette tape, and it was American Pie, and I listened to it this morning with my daughters, and I say to myself, the floor is yours. But the day the music died, when I listened to Chuck, I mean, he's talking about educated adults, sort of commanding the marketplace for quality music. And then the boomers came in, young, boom, next thing you know, the psychedelic revolution, and then all of a sudden it's placating to, teenagers. It was there.
Yeah, well,
go ahead. I mean, riff on that.
Let me put a grace note or two on
his
comments. Something that I want to say up front, and that is that and Joel Dorn, who was a very wonderful friend of mine, he and I used to talk all about all kinds of stuff, and he said, everybody's waiting for the big bands to come back. He said, they ain't coming back.
Right.
Because this is the idea of American Pie, that somehow politics and music influence one another going forward. But the people that are making the music are the same people who are producing the leadership. And their ideas are coming from, I hate the word the masses, they're coming from the folks, okay?
Right.
And so the music, the elegance of, Duke Ellington and, all those people he mentioned came from the intelligence of the American public. All right? As you then move forward, they still have their people. Those people worked and worked and worked until, they passed away. That never ended for them, but a whole another group of people, this bunch of teenagers, where they coined the word teenager really to describe this horde of young people that were there, suddenly, just out of the blue, created their own stars, their own idea of what they wanted. And it really didn't have anything to do. The problem was when things got really political, they began seeing the beautiful music that Chuck mentioned as somehow establishment.
Right.
And
you're
really,
nailing this.
But you can't get more revolutionary, really, than Duke Ellington when you think about what these guys did as musicians, how revolutionary what they did was, but it was sophisticated. It was intelligent, and it came from the folks that produced Roosevelt, and the right leaders in Kennedy. Whether you like him or not, he was whatever he was. But now you've got this kind of thing now, which is non-music, and it's a huge spectacle of some sort, which has no nourishment in it. In terms of spiritual nourishment, and you get a Donald Trump, or you get an invisible guy like Biden, who we have, the invisible president.
That's right. You're unbelievable.
My theory is playing out as I'm living all these years. I'm seeing I was right. It's true.
I know, man.
I just made this up for the song, but I'm right. It's the funniest damn thing. And don't forget, the America that produced Duke Ellington and Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and Billy Eckstine and all that, so many others, they beat Hitler. And they didn't even have an army in 1938 when Hitler was taking over everything. And they beat Hitler with a president who was a cripple in a wheelchair. So that's the nature of the people that produce this kind of music. Now we have a bunch of bikers and bullshitters, who are posturing around like they're tough guys, and they can't win a war that they get into. They get their asses kicked every time they go anywhere.
Don McLean you're blowing my mind. I mean, I want to go back to, you said something really intense right at the end of the Seeger story. You said cats would come to the show and say, let's burn this place down. And you didn't like that, right? You didn't.
No.
So what in the Seeger, McLean doctrine, what's the power to the people message? Nonviolent? I want you to talk about what would appeal to you.
The people message is the internet. We are experiencing something now that nobody realizes what's happening, and I'll tell you what I think's happening.
Yeah.
There has been you're the perfect guy to tell this to. There has been, everybody talks about, isn't it like the 60s or whatever, the left-wing movement. Where's the labor movement?
Right.
Where's the labor movement? That UAW-CIO makes the nation roll and go, building trains and tractors and buses every day.
Absolutely. Well, there's nothing. It's decimated.
UAW-CIO puts wheels on the USA. It was a great song. So, and the union maid. There once was a union maid who never was afraid of the goons and the ginks and the company thinks. Woody Guthrie song. So there's no union movement. Hey, you know what? There's a national strike going on right now. Nobody's taking these lowball jobs.
You're right.
All right?
You're right.
No one told them to do it. And when they finally see $25 an hour, those jobs are going to be filled. And that's when inflation is going to come back, because it's all going to be passed on to everybody. And boom, you're going to get an inflation bang that's going to knock everybody's socks off, okay? Wow. And interest rates are going to go flying higher, because economics, as I understand it, as a person who studied this in college, and I have a degree in this stuff, and I like it, as one of the very smartest people I ever knew said, you can manipulate this stuff, but it's physics. It's not just numbers. It's a form of physics. And so this is what's happening. And nobody really realizes the people have all of a sudden independently decided, I'm not doing this job anymore, okay? For this shitty money. When it goes up, then you're going to see the supply and demand happen, and there'll be a demand for that money and that $1 an hour wage, and that's when the inflation is going to kick in, big time. And that's when the one thing that really bothers me, and I'll finish what I have to say, is this homeless problem we have in this country. I mean, I wrote an album called Homeless Brother. I have a foundation. I want to do something in wherever I can in a small way with whatever money comes in my life after. And whatever I have left is going to go into my foundation and use my property in Maine as a place to be creative about this. But Biden and nobody else is getting up there and saying, once the stimulus stuff starts, you're going to have a lot of ladies and men living in the car with their little children. This is going to get so ugly. And right now it's percolating, and no one's paying any attention. And golly, they really should think about this, because I don't know, it just doesn't seem like people know how to look around corners in this country anymore. It's so obvious to me.
Well, actually, it behooves people to stay in power by not solving the problems. I mean,
you think so?
Well, the greed factor is, that's the point, is that we just talked about the greatest generation. I mean, let's face it, in the mid 60s, teenagers we were so wealthy, especially compared to the 50s and 40s. I mean, some of that music, I don't know, they had money in their
and we were indulged too.
Oh.
Parents were happy the war was over. It was bright and shining.
Oh man, people were procreating like play. It was crazy, man. No, I mean,
partying up, but still, those people still had that they'd been through the Depression, been through the war attitude. So they were serious, but there was a lot more joy, I think, than ever before. And we were the beneficiaries of that as young people. I had a fantastic time growing up with my friends. We were always going to the movies and this and that. And we had a club we belonged to. We were on a swimming team. And, it was the most idyllic thing that you could ever imagine. But I dropped out because after my father died when I was 15, everything changed. I didn't have any friends anymore. My mother didn't get invited out anymore. We went to this little apartment and lived in these 2 rooms for about 7 years. And I realized my whole life ended in a minute. And I realized that, they say you can't go home, but I didn't leave home. Home left me.
Wow.
When my father died, I didn't have a home anymore.
Ugh.
So I dove into it. That's when Pete came into my life, because he was what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a singer and a thinker, and I wanted to spread my ideas around, and I wanted to learn about everything, and I wanted to ramble, and I wanted to see the country, and that's what I did. But today, for some strange reason, the guy starting out with that attitude, I am named with every major music act there is on the planet. My name comes up.
Right.
And I know of nobody who slept in the back of their car in the 60s where they can say that. I have my life has been so strange. I mean, I'm riding right.
Well, you're
right
I just want to get a couple things out of the way.
Sure.
So you might have crossed paths with this cat, Judy Henske, the folk singer, and
I know who she is.
Her first gig at the Bottom Line, Herbie Hancock was on Wurlitzer and Keter Betts was on upright bass, and I'm like, what was the closest thing? Did you wind up ever? I mean, here's a couple questions. Did Coleman Hawkins or any jazzers ever open for you at the Gaslight? Or did any? No. Because Wavy Gravy Wavy's a dear friend of mine. I mean, you were in this milieu, and there was really no.
But when I worked at the potting shed in the summer, there was a lady named Toshiko who had a hot jazz.
Oh my, Toshiko Akiyoshi. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I knew her.
Are you kidding me?
And then I was on shows with a variety of different flamenco guys. George Morel and several of the greatest, and I would sit there and watch them practice every day. I love the guitar more than anything in the world, and they would be sitting on the sofa, and they would go, and I would sit there and just keep quiet and watch. Oh my God, I'll never forget that. I mean, I'm in love with the guitar, but after I lived with these guys, and then of course I worked with Brownie McGee and Sonny Terry for weeks at a time and lived with them in that same Lennox situation. They were the headliners and I was the opener, and I learned a lot about their life and the blues and writing songs and all kinds of stuff by being around them. I did do a gig once with the Ellington Orchestra.
No, you did. Wait, hold on. What was the name of the potting shed with Toshiko? Where was it called?
Yeah, it was part of the Music Inn, and it was owned by a guy named Don Soviero. And Don Soviero was somebody who who should be a movie star. He wore a white suit.
Oh my God, what a ridiculous cat,
man. A dark tan, gold, his black hair combed back. He had his wife and his children, and he would bring his mistress with him, and they would all have fun together. And the wife would have, I don't know, she had whatever action she had going. She was a fantastic cook. And they had this club called the Potting Shed on the grounds of the Music Inn. And Soviero bought the Shaw Agency, which happened to have the contract for Ray Charles.
Wow.
So every summer, I would play a 2-week stand with Brownie and Sonny at this Potting Shed, or with Toshiko, or with some other jazz group. But every weekend, you'd see the Modern Jazz Quartet would do a concert there, or Fats Domino would be the next night, or you would see
Ornette Coleman or something. One of
those guys. I saw I saw my favorite one of all. I can't think of his name now because I'm going too fast.
It's fine. No, you're doing.
The guy with his pork pie hat who always had his back.
Are you kidding me, dude? Mingus?
Who's his name?
Charles Mingus?
No, not Mingus. There's the other one. Played piano.
Oh, Thelonious.
You know, he's the biggest name ever, and I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't.
He had a pork pie. Thelonious Monk? No.
Yes.
Yeah, Thelonious. Yeah, of course, the pork pie hat, dude. That guy was.
I saw a whole long show. I fell in love with that guy.
Oh, this is and you're talking. This is in Lenox, Mass, right?
Yeah, the Music Inn.
Right.
It's closed now. It was a big tent, held about 500 or 600 people. Of course, I saw Seeger there. I saw, every weekend there'd be at least two acts, maybe three, and they were all out of this world. And and I saw Thelonious Monk, and I remember I thought to myself, where did this cat come from, man? I mean, what is this? This is so far above my pay level that I can't even comprehend this, And talk about revolutionary. People talking revolution is one thing. This guy is a revolution. And then I got his records, and I would hear how he would manhandle a standard and make it into something that was like wrought iron modern art, And the same thing I found with Albert King was sort of had something that he did that was like that. I worked with him also.
Wow.
And him and that guitar and Bobby Blue Bland, they were on the same show. We had a show down in Tennessee. It was me and Bill Monroe in the afternoon, and then Bobby Blue Bland and Albert King opened for Bland. I sat through that whole thing. I just died.
Wait, what year was that, by the way?
That would have been the early 80s.
Oh my, that is a burning concert right there. Burning.
You can't imagine it.
I would have melted away.
Bobby Blue Bland, nobody even knows who Bobby Bland is. He was the most incredible R&B stylist that ever lived, and he had a thing, man. He was like a pasha, a king. He was a king. And he had sidemen there in his group. They were none of them more than 14. I don't know where he got.
Well, no, the guys. Also, the thing about those bands, those guys could play jazz and the blues and shuffle music.
Yeah.
Before it goes out of my brain.
Sure.
Were you influenced at all by the beatniks?
Yes.
If so, who?
Kerouac. I read a bunch of his stuff. I loved that stuff. I also had a big poem. I can't remember at the moment, but Kerouac's book is the one that inspired me to write Homeless Brother.
On the road.
Yeah. And,
really?
That was behind Homeless Brother, and then I added to that. I did The Legend of Andrew McCrew, and I did all these other songs, and Joel Dorn and I did that, and then I found I had a brother-in-law who was a brilliant Spanish painter, and I had a book of early photography by a lady named Doris Ullman, and Doris Ullman and a man named John Jacob Niles, who was a weird-sounding singer who played the zither, and these were all these Brahmins,
dude.
That went. There were all these Brahmins that went stomping around the Ozarks trying to find America. It was really a crazy thing.
Yep.
Seeger is part of that.
Really?
Seeger comes from that. Yeah, Seeger comes from that Brahmin tradition of trying to find America, and he doesn't realize that we've already found it. We're Americans. They haven't figured that out, But he's part of that thing, yeah. Sandberg was an elite, who was before all of them.
That's right.
But anyway, Ullman did this picture of this woodcutter, and I gave the woodcutter picture to my ex-brother-in-law, and I said, could you do me a painting with this man in a boxcar? And I asked him when he was kind enough to do it, and that became the cover of Homeless Brother. And that gorgeous painting, which is enormous, is still in my house in Maine.
First of all, I want to ask you, why is that album so hard to find? That's the one album I can never find.
You're going to be able to, because the 6 or 7 albums I made for United Artists are going to be
reissued,
flogged pretty good in this 50th anniversary celebration by United Artists, which is now owned by Universal Songs, which I suppose you've noticed how these big companies, Warner Brothers, BMG, Universal, are buying up all the major catalogs of people like Dylan and Springsteen.
Absolutely,
and
yes.
all that stuff.
Yes.
Now, why do you think that is?
Well, I don't. I want you're articulating so well. Just continue. I don't even have an answer.
Well, the reason that is, in my opinion, is that the people, the experts in making money with music, are the people at BMG and Warner Brothers and Universal, not Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan and whoever else has sold their catalogs. They think they're getting a big price, but they're going to pay a capital gains tax of 30% or a third of that money is going to go, because every dime that those songs are worth start at zero, so they're losing a third of that money. And then they're going to have it, and they're never going to see another dime from like a Rolling Stone or Positively 4th Street or anything. It's a shame, because these boys and these publishers, they know that new sources of income are coming that are going to make that purchase price look like nothing.
And we're talking to an economist right now. This is not jive.
I can guarantee you.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, but
I've been offered enormous amounts of money for my catalog. I own everything. I'm not selling it. No way.
I want to dive into this. Wait, I want to, because this is, I've interviewed bass players from Canada who got picked up by Brownie and Sonny and
yeah.
And they're in the middle of Manitoba or whatever. I mean, what is it? What did you learn about the blues in parentheses from those cats? I know they didn't really like each other personally. They did enough to get along.
I think they I think they loved each other in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had enough of each other.
Right, that's right. That's right.
Like a lot of people. You get married, you're married for 30 years or whatever.
13 years is done for me. Yeah, no, I'm with you, bro. I'm with you.
And it's enough, okay? it's enough already. And so they would get in the room, and I was there. I was privileged to hear this. First of all, I'll tell you some stuff about them. Sonny was funny as hell, and he could see a little bit, but he had this. I'm a funny guy. I'm like a doctor in some ways, because I know how to stay healthy on the road, and I've been working at this forever. So he was swollen up, his joints, his elbow was swollen out, and he'd stay in the bed all day. I said, Sonny, you got to start walking, man.
Right.
If you don't walk, you're not going to be able to. And so, what you need to do is take some aspirin or some, Tylenol or whatever every day. And then you need to walk. And he started doing it. He took my advice. I'd see him out there with his cane, and he'd be walking. And he said, I feel better. I said, well, that's the key. You got to. Well, then he lucked out, and he found this great lady who was a teacher, and she was all business. And she really took him in hand, man.
Wow.
And really straightened him out. And they had a good, long marriage together. And she was strong. And he needed that, because a lot of these folks who can't see, they become terribly dependent on people. And sometimes I've known artists like this who get, kind of used by folks. Well, if you don't give me more, I'm going to have to leave. Oh, don't leave, this kind of thing. So he found the great woman, and that really didn't go great with Brownie, because now he wasn't the main guy. There was this other lady there who really had his interest at heart. Not that Brownie didn't. They worked together, but at night they would start hitting us off in the room after the show.
and I'd be trying to sleep, and they'd be bickering back and forth. Well, you missed that, man. That lick you played there was all wrong, man. So what are you talking about? I don't need you, and stuff, and back and forth. Yeah, you do need me. I was on Finian's Rainbow. You weren't, and it's back and forth. And hearing this shit.
You're just like, guys, can I just get some rest here?
I'm laughing
Yeah,
because I know their whole history, right? But what I learned by my journey, I was around so many people that were not like anything I knew from Westchester, okay?
Sure.
And they rubbed off on me, and I became a different guy. And I became a much more, I don't know, it transformed me. They got in my blood. It all got in my blood. All the jazz and the folk and the rock and the guitars and the joy and the music and the people and the troubles and everything else. It wasn't the post-war hula hoop, country club existence in the beautiful neighborhood where everybody was, kept their problems quiet, and they also drank like motherfuckers too.
Absolutely. You weren't dwelling in Greenwich like hanging out. You were in the grit and gray. Yeah, I did.
Were you from Greenwich?
Stony Brook, Long Island.
Well, no, I was from Larchmont Woods, which was near Larchmont.
No, I know Newrow very well. I know exactly where you came from.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to tell you. But I left that, and I have friends who never left. I have relatives who never left there. My mother's Italian. I have cousins who never left home.
Yeah.
As long as their mom cooked for them, they had their job. They come home. They were like, you ever see the movie Marty?
Yeah.
With Ernest Borgnine?
Sure.
Those are my relatives on my mother's side. That was it right there. And they were a lot like the guys I went to high school with. What do you want to do tonight, Marty? I don't know. What do you want to do? You want to go? Yeah, I don't know. Well, you want to get the car and go over there? Maybe there's some girls there. Okay, that's it.
Were you taking Metro North into the city in the early '60s, or how would you get into when you were just in high school?
Yeah, I caught the train in Larchmont.
And then were you there? Were you getting off on like Queskin or the Weavers I know, but where were you kicking it around in the early '60s? And were you hip to the payola scandal? Did you know about that?
I was trying to figure out how to be a musician.
Right.
I knew I could sing. I never wrote a song. I was playing guitar. I was playing 5-string banjo. I was a nymphomaniac for information about how you did this shit, okay? And I got to know Eric Darling.
I love that. I knew that was. And did you know Weisberg too, or no?
No, I didn't care for Weisberg's playing.
Darling was a badass dude. Alan, badass dude, man.
I thought that Weisberg was a little bit too trained.
Really?
He's a Juilliard student.
Yeah. A little too academic.
No, I admired him. He was a wonderful, great player. But, he had a Mercedes, and he was, he was just like...
I love this dude.
He was too confident.
Sure.
Eric was brilliant, and he was in his own world. He was in his own philosophical world.
Really? Good.
Oh, yes. He was in his own world. He was more of an Ayn Rand type of a guy who believed in Americans should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Now, he took over for Seeger in the Weavers, and I know, because I know all about these people, they would drive down south, and Lee Hayes would start pontificating about the Depression and everything, and Eric would say, well, they should have paid their bills. And Eric and Lee were dear friends. But Eric, well, you don't pay your bills, you get thrown out of your house, Lee. That's what happens.
Wow.
Instead of, if Seeger had been there, yes, that's right. I remember that too. And they brought the sheriffs in, of course, and it was terrible. No, now they had this other guy, and he was saying, you don't pay your bills, you get thrown out.
Were you going to Washington Square Park in that milieu?
Not much. No, I was in my room a lot, practicing. The one thing I got from Eric was practice. I was doing vocal lessons. I was doing vocal exercises. I was practicing. I was getting my tone together. I didn't really want to hear a bunch of yahoos singing songs I heard better somewhere. I wanted to get my tone pure. I wanted to be as pure as I could be. So I worked on my guitar playing, getting it beautiful, sound out of it, and getting it clear and clean. And the same with the banjo. And there are some banjo things that are on YouTube. I did that. I got it together, where it really rang, like it rang. You could hear it. If you were in the hills and you heard me play in those days, that thing would ring like crazy.
Oh man, that's what I want to hear, man. I mean, did you ever consider? This is the interesting question. Is like,
sure.
So you get in the studio and you're how similar were your live performances? Based on, like, to me, like, there's something I definitely don't want to go to a concert and see the song performed the same way it was on the record. I'm more of in the sense that, like, I never want to. You never play the same song the same way once. So
no.
But with you, I mean, did you for a long time? Not a long time, but did you perform live without a trap drummer, or did you always have drums? Was basically. And I'm talking about...
No.
Go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
I was a soloist for 20 years. I played... In my heyday, I was solo everywhere. You can see that on YouTube at Albert Hall. I'm playing... I do Babylon with the audience.
Wow.
I did a solo thing everywhere in the world for 20 years. And then I took on one guitar player, a guy named John Platania, who was my guitar player for 15 years, and he is also... the guitar for Van Morrison. It was on all those records, Moon Dance, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
He loved Van. I love this guy. And we were together for 15 years, 2 guitars. Then I kept growing. I wanted to do more, and I took on Tony Migliore on the piano in the early 1990s, I guess, because I started making records using him more and more. And then, I had a 4 guys behind me. And so it works perfectly because, I can always do the solo thing anytime I want because it's very second nature to me. But I can also rock and roll a big festival with the Stones. If it's loud enough, I can kick any group's ass.
I wanted to ask you about so Darling was like practice. Now, in my mind, practice means playing what you don't know. But, that's more of a jazz philosophy. Sonny Rollins, you listen to these guys practice. They're just...
No, I'm talking about doing the same things over and over and over until it's perfect.
I dig. No, but I want you to talk to younger cats especially about how you got comfortable performing on stage. Like what?
Oh, well, that's from doing it. That's from doing, 2 and 3 weeks at a time in a place where you absolutely want to kill yourself. 2 shows a night, 3 shows on the weekend. If a rope was handy, it'd be around my neck, and you'd be so exhausted by the second show on Saturday night and filled with sweat. And then you say, oh, Jesus Christ, I have to go on again, and Troubadour or something. And you'd get on there again, and you'd be better than you were ever all night. So what you learned was that this body of ours has an enormous reserve of energy. And if you challenge yourself, which I learned this from swimming, I was pushed and pushed and pushed to learn this, I would do it, and I would be better than I was the first set, better than the second set. It would be the best set, and I'd be saying crazy stuff too, because I'm loose, and the energy is wild.
You're flying,
and
dude.
I just want to say that the jazz thing.
Yeah.
My piano player is a brilliant Oscar Peterson style jazz player. Okay,
Wow.
Tony Migliore. Yeah. So when we do a song, we do American Pie. Everybody is in the idiom, in the mood. They do the song that is, I'll do the opening part. It sounds a little like the record. Then we move into, of course, the chorus sounds like it. But people are playing, new things as we go around the band and come back each time. There's these country bands. I won't mention their names. Some of them are pretty famous. They get around. If a guy doesn't play the lick exactly like the record, They have a band meeting every goddamn night.
You know, man, I'm just so tired of that vanity, dude. Give me a break, man.
And, you know, and
give me a
get
break.
a track, man, and fire these guys. You know, I mean, sing to a track. You know, if you're so hung up on that. No, my guys, we breathe together. It's like Flat and Scruggs or something.
Dude, I love you. Got to breathe. I loved, you know, deep, big. So how have you? But okay, but Don, okay, I'm going to push back and say those engagements, those relentless 6-night-a-week, 3 sets a night gigs, they don't exist for cats anymore. So they, whether or not you had a rope or not, they can't get they can't get comfortable being on stage because there's no gigs.
Well, that's a terrible shame, and it was like vaudeville was for people who became real big stars. Some of them, Sinatra had the rustic cabin. You know, he played some places, and then he got picked up by Harry James right away. But
would you? I mean, if you were 16, I mean, you'd probably go back and get an economics degree from Columbia. But if you went into music today, would you just busk on the street and create your own opportunities? What would you do?
No, what I would do, first of all, I had nothing. I had no money. I put myself through school. I supported my mother. Everything after my father died, we had zilch. And it's funny because, you know, they say that you know, I'm broke. I'm not poor. Okay?
That's right. Broke but not poor.
Never poor. I was never poor. But I was broke, and my mother and I were broke, but I wasn't poor. And she wasn't poor. I had dreams, I had education, I had things I was doing, I was busy. You know, poor is different from broke. So, yeah. But I would, to answer your question very succinctly, I would study Ed Sheeran if I were a young guy now. I would say, how did this dude do this, you know? And how can I use the internet, and how can I use social networking in order to, and what did he do? He didn't have it easy. He started from the ground up, and, you know, he's not like one of these guys where somebody came and invested $1 million, and there's a lot of that in Nashville, you know, or anywhere where they come and put money up to get someone going, and most of the time it doesn't even do the trick. You know, wealthy parents want to please their talented children, and unfortunately, sometimes the child can deliver and sometimes the child can't, but it's not anybody's fault. It's alchemy, you know. And well, he didn't do that, I don't think. I would figure out what he did, and I would study up on him pretty good, because I liked the idea of Pete Seeger. I like the idea of being with me and my guitar and banjo and my ideas and my songs and the power of my intellect, not a whole lot of equipment and a whole lot of people, you know. So
this is what I just also want to, because I mean, when I talk to cats that were, well, I mean, guys like David Spinoza, they were on that album.
That's right.
All right, and like Arif Mardin and Dr. John called him in one day, and they were doing it was Arif and Dr. John. They were doing Right Place, Wrong Time, and they said, listen, we need a guitar solo, and Spinoza hit a clam, and he's like, let me do that again, and they said, no, that's perfect, and it made the song. Was there a McLean clam ever? Because I mean, you guys. Today you'll spend 4 hours trying to get a kick drum sound. Back then it was like one take, done. I mean, was there kind of like a memorable, I don't want to say clam, but you know, unintentional thing that wound up getting recorded and making the tune a hit?
No, Don McLean does not make mistakes. That is why I am known as a control freak.
Control freak? No, that's like you play the same song all the same way. No, you don't. It's fast and loose,
of course.
man.
I can do anything you want, but it's no mistake. That's the key. Never a mistake. No. No, I was always prepared. You know, I was always prepared. I was always ready, and I've done this so much for so long that I can do it. I can do 10 takes, and they'll all be different, and they'll all be acceptable, and maybe, you know, better than that. for example, Since I Don't Have You, I'm very proud of that record because I hit a note I'll never hit again on that record, and Larry Butler produced it. That's one take.
Really?
No edits. Yeah, the one take with the band in the studio, strings added later. Crying, one take in the studio, strings added later. That's the way I am. I'm ready for Freddie. Now, it's different if you're an instrumentalist. All those guys, I've known so many great players, and even Chet Atkins would do things over, of course, because your fingers can't move quite as fast as your mind sometimes, and so, you fix it. But as a singer, I've got that thing in my heart. I own that song. You
make a good point. You make a good point. The instrumentalist thing is very different than. Did you have a relationship with Bill Graham?
Now, I didn't like Bill Graham.
Interesting.
Because I thought he was like a kind of a hoodlum or something. I don't like people that have territories, and I don't like
I get
dangerous
it.
people.
I get it.
It was kind of dangerous.
No, I get it. I mean, it's absolutely legitimate. I mean,
I didn't like his face, for one thing. I thought he was a little scary.
So I mean, were you on stage at the Fillmore West or the Fillmore East ever, or did it never even?
Yeah, I think I was on there when it closed. They had me sing that song "American Pie" on the stage when it was closing. I think they play. Yeah, once I think I did something like that. I can't remember, but I kind of remember. And I remember Graham bringing me to the Berkeley Community Theater
absolutely,
there.
Absolutely.
And then he was very nice and all. I don't mean to be disparaging. It's just I'm being.
Dude, you're being honest, McLean. You're allowed to be honest, man. Holy cow!
He frightened me. He did.
This isn't the House Un-American Activities box showing up at your door. I mean, that to me. Yeah. How old were you when that box showed up there? What, 13?
16.
16, and you're reading 16. That stuff.
That's right. You see, my father was a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, but then again, he voted Democratic because he didn't like Nixon.
Yeah, so I don't even know what. I mean, a Republican at that time, that's like conservation and like conservative. I mean, it was like a very moderate thing. It wasn't like reactionary, alternative reality stuff.
No. In the old days, Republicans were very militaristic and very business. Yeah. Democrats were all very militaristic and very business, but slightly nicer. So, I tell people, if they had attacked 9/11 and Kennedy was in power and they knew that all came from Saudi Arabia or whatever, that country would have been gone. Kennedy would have dropped a bomb on those people. They have this ridiculous idea that the Kennedys were liberal. The Democrats were a very conservative party. The Kennedy, both of them were in the House Un-American Activities Committee, and they were, and McCarthy dated one of the Kennedy sisters.
Dude, why are you? This is like, I mean, I don't know. Talking to McLean, I mean, I feel like I've been enlightened here. Don, listen, I wanted to ask you. You're coming in the 24th. Or at least you're playing in Tucson on the 24th. I would love to link up with you. You got 5 days in between shows, but I don't know if you're coming in earlier. I just would love to catch a hang, maybe do another half hour with you in person. I'd love to meet you.
Let me see if I can work something like that out. I usually don't talk, but I'd like to meet you too.
Yeah, no, it would be cool, man. I've done Gordon Lightfoot, Ramblin' Jack, David Clayton, Tom, a whole bunch of, but I mean, really, man, I mean, at 9.5 years old as a homesick kid, your songs saved me. It was like the one thing that kept me a little bit rooted, and I wound up at that summer camp for 14 summers. So it would be cool. It would be cool to just. Anyway, it's really an honor to.
No, I'd be happy to do that. Let's see if we can work something like that out when I get there. Give me a shout.
Yeah.
Like the day before or whatever, because I mean, I'm probably going to drive in with my friend and then do the show, stay over, and drive home. But I could talk to you on the phone again if you'd like.
Hey, whatever you want, man. You want to get a coffee? Yeah, let's do a phone. Let's do another phoner or whatever feels comfortable. But it would be.
But I would say that all these people I met.
Yeah.
Were loosened me up. I was brought up in a house that was and I love my parents. Okay, I don't want this to be negative or anything, but it was panic driven. My mother had headaches and she was panicked about things. My father was always worried about money. He was panicked about things.
Sure.
And I bring in, my father was like, what's the photograph, Grant, somebody, the two farmers together with the pitchfork, that?
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Yeah, I know the photo.
Well, that was my father. That was about as musical as he was. Okay.
Great vibe.
I brought Bo Diddley into the house.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
My father and Bo Diddley. You got to catch a picture of my dad. It's one of these. There's lots of photos of me around, and you see him. He's always in a suit. He looks like someone, a wonderful person from the 1920s, maybe. Somebody like Charlie Chase. The comic, he has that look with the hair and the glasses and the mustache, and he's quite serious. And here I bring in Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, Elvis Presley,
Fats Domino?
Oh, everybody.
Yeah.
The Everlys, you name it. All day long, I'm a teenager. Music is going. I'm not sure they really like that all that much, but but it was so, and it was so frightening to them. It was frightening. They were a whole generation older than my other friends' parents. I wasn't born until my mother was 42.
Unbelievable.
She wasn't supposed to have any more kids, and I happened.
Thank God.
So the funny thing was that they were ready to settle down and play bridge and do gardening, and here I come in with Bo Diddley. It was
man.
It was heavy.
Well, and life expectancy was not nearly what it is today, so they were just trying to live out their years in peace, and you were.
Yeah, they didn't want to hear "Who Do You Love," man. I'm telling you.
Well, also you were bringing in Dave Van Ronk and all these ridiculous cats. I mean, dude.
That was pretty much after my dad died. When my father died in '61. At that point, there was some folk stuff coming in. There were, of course, communists, which he didn't know, and then, but all the early rock and roll stuff, the heavy black heavy as it could be. I mean, all they call it doo-wop. I hate that term because they were just rock and roll.
Sure.
The Flamingos, man, that's rock and roll. That's not doo-wop. The I Only Have Eyes for You. I mean, that's one of my favorite records, and that record was made at the Regent Sound Studios, where I made Homeless Brother with Joel Dorn. That was his major studio. And that place, I mean, you could walk in there and there would be Dizzy Gillespie, or there would be Roland Kirk.
Oh,
Rossan.
Yeah, Atlantic. I mean, dude, I want McLean with Rossan and Dizzy cooking the groove, man.
I'm telling you, you'd never. He would say, "Come on down to the studio," and I would just wander in there, and there would be, Liza Minnelli. I mean, you never knew who was going to be in there. In fact, one time, who's the great comedian? The one-liner.
What, Red Fox? No, I don't.
No. He played the violin, but he wasn't Jack Benny.
I know Harpo Marx was on the scene. He, but
he's in Goodfellas. He says, take my wife, please.
Oh, dude.
Henny Youngman.
Yeah.
So Henny Youngman was there one night, right? And I don't know why he was there. So he would go in the bathroom, and he came out, and he went over to Joel, and he said, "Here, have a diamond stick pin," and it was a stick pin with a dime attached to it. Here's a diamond stick pin.
Oh my God! Just
handed it to him.
Well, let's do this again. We'll connect. Be safe on the road, man, and I'll call you the day before. Maybe we can get some coffee or something.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll just talk on the phone. I'm really not good at being around anybody before I have to sing.
Hey, whatever you want, man. Let's do set two. Let's do set two.
I'll meet you after the show.
Absolutely. Let's do another phone, or we'll do set two.
I'm enjoying this very much. We'll talk whenever you want. Okay.
Much love, man. Take it easy.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Later, man. First big score of the new year, Don McLean. Bye bye, Miss American Pie, but so much more. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We will see you later.
Don't think twice, 'cause then it's gone.